So yeah, this is when China tries to prevent these journalists from either contracting or getting infected or was spreading themselves a potentially deadly virus. This has been always the dichotomy about China's zero COVID policy, right? It's always been the dichotomy about this, where it's like, um, it's somehow wrong or dystopian to not let hundreds of thousands of people die. That's always been the sort of basic theme of these sort of ideas about China's zero COVID policy. The dystopian lockdowns and all these extreme measures, like describing it as, somehow harmful or a violation of people's rights, coming from a country where upwards of almost 1 million people have died of COVID. Probably, first of all, I don't believe the U.S. figures about COVID deaths, so I imagine it's higher than what it is. So it probably is 1 million people by this point, at least. And this is always the sort of the dance that they have to do. This is the dance that they have to do. It's so dystopian and creepy and sinister, not letting your civilians die, not letting millions of civilians just be killed in the name of, like, being able to go to fucking the Applebee's and get a big Bud Light at Applebee's. Did you see Matt Lee giving it to the State Department spokesman? I saw the clip. Yeah, it's actually amazing to hear that from someone in, like, the White House press corps. I was actually, like, taken aback by it. Because the vast majority of the people that show up to those things are just, like, dutiful stenographers for the United States government and the State Department and the National Security Establishment. So to see someone, like, actually get adversarial with it, I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? We can look at that in a bit, though. But yeah, this is it, though. This is it, though. It's dystopian and scary and authoritarian that China refuses to allow this virus to just run rampant in society and kill thousands of people. This is a policy that, like, objectively, if you look at the deaths in the United States versus, like, the population density and the population of China, this is a policy that has saved millions of lives. And it's always framed as being this very dark, scary, dystopian thing. And, like, Nick responded here. Yeah, they simultaneously refuse to believe China's low numbers. And again, I'm not to focus on the shit posting, but this is what it is. They're lying about the numbers. Oh, you believe that they've actually had this few infections? While also saying all these protections that they're doing are actually, like, scary and bad and wrong and harmful. Like, I saw one guy sharing this chart of infections in China that just goes up like that and it just goes down like that. Like, it's a really short wave. And they're like, oh, you actually believe this? And it's like, yeah. They saw that there was an infection getting out of control in society, so they took these extreme measures to try and contain that. Yes. I don't see, like, we've seen all the footage of all the measures that they've taken, so yes, I do believe that they saw, oh shit, there's a massive health crisis happening here, and now we have to do something. We have to actually do something about that, rather than just, like, do all these quarter measures for 2 fucking years while letting thousands of people die, hundreds of thousands of people die. Yes, I believe that. I know it's hard for us to understand. It's hard for us living in, like, Canada or the United States to understand a government that just, like, puts the physical health and the well-being of its citizens, like, at the highest priority. It's weird for us to try and imagine that. But yes, I do believe that it is possible in other societies to, when the government actually does things, the government actually, like, does take concrete steps to, like, protect people's lives. Yeah, I do believe that, actually. Yeah, they can't imagine a society where good things can actually happen. That's right. They're feeding people, sending people free vegetables, but at what cost? These extreme measures that are in a basic guide into how to stop the pandemic. And in fact, if we had taken the same measures, perhaps the pandemic would actually be a thing of the past now. It's only the reason that we've let this fucking spiral out of control is why the pandemic just will never fucking end. because we refuse to take any steps whatsoever, let alone these basic measures to protect people's lives. Where could they have possibly found the money for all these measures? Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Exactly, but that's it. It's like when we look at like approval ratings and stuff. Oh, you believe the approval ratings of the Chinese Communist Party? Like you believe this kind of propaganda? It's like, yes, I do. It turns out when you have a government that actually like does things to help people and help improve people's lives, improve their standards of living, make their lives easier, people are like, yeah, actually I support this and I think it's good. It's fucking ludicrous. Yeah, Trump fucked up pretty badly, but the CDC gave it the worst recommendations when people were most receptive to government advice. Yeah, it's the idea that this is just a trend. Obviously, Trump did fuck it up, but the idea that this is some failure of Trump or conservatism even is complete bullshit, right? This is like what the West is uniquely incapable of dealing with this stuff. And then it leads you to these kind of things. It leads you to these threads. Canada just blew past 34,000 likely double deaths without a blip in the news, but yeah, China's dystopian. Yeah, what not dystopian at all is allowing these privately run elderly care centers to just become fucking giant tombs full of dead people with zero consequences for the people running these places. That's not dystopian. What's not dystopian is forcing people to go to work at the Gap while there's this health crisis and people are getting sick and dying all throughout our society. That's not dystopian. This is dystopian when your fucking servant is dressed in PPE to both protect you and protect himself from you, spreading pestilence and disease in their society. I'm glad you're going to rewatch that VJ interview. It was wonderful. It was really great. Yeah, this is the dystopian vibes. Your fucking servant is mixing you drinks while taking basic health precautions. That's dystopian. Making specialty cocktails in their full PPE gear. Yeah. The whole thing's kind of just surreal. Venues and lobbies are constantly sprayed down with disinfectant by workers, sometimes wearing PPE with the Olympic rings. When I got back to my hotel yesterday, I almost slipped on the floors that are frequently washed down with Lysol. Oh my, is she okay? Mary, you all right? That's so scary that they're spraying disinfectant. You almost fell down and slipped on the disinfectant. It reminds me that there's a pandemic I'm trying to ignore, God damn it. Yeah. The floors are dystopianly clean. This cleaning is so dystopian. It's clean, but is it too clean? At what cost is it clean? That's the question. Adding to the feeling of overall dislocation at the hotel bar, they were playing French rap over the speakers in CGTN on the big screen. Okay. Sure. They're playing music and showing the news. At the hotel bar, can you fucking believe this? They're playing music and they put the news on TV. This is fucked up. I'm so sorry that you had to go through this. She should just leave immediately because this sounds really scary. This sounds really scary that they're playing French rap and putting on music and putting on the news on TV. I told my BF about this thread and he was like, was the Lysol communism? And it's a great question. That's right. Cool backdrop behind the projector screen. It is cool, yeah. When my German doctor told me to imagine my favorite tree approaching me to relax, this is not what she had in mind. It's a robot spraying disinfectant. You know what's not dystopian is when you have robots that track down immigrants at the border and like tase them. That's not dystopian. This like amazing technological accomplishment though, that's something we should all be very fearful of. The disinfectant robot. Anything come up about the American that defected? Is that real? Yeah, we can look at that later. She left this absolute queenly TikTok comment because she's playing on the Chinese Olympic team, and someone's like, "What? You grew up in San Francisco?" And she's like, "Cry about it." It's amazing. This is James Cromwell 2064. I agree. And this is the ultimate. I have not tried this chocolate fountain yet. Whenever I walk up to take a look, a kind server in a face shield comes up to me and tries to get me to try one. It's all terribly weird. It's really weird at this hotel that the polite server is encouraging me to sample the delicious chocolate fountain. They're trying to get me to sample the delicious chocolate fountain dystopianly. It's so weird to just acknowledge COVID. That's weird, I guess. Stop being polite to me. What's wrong with this? You should all be scared. You should all be scared of your life. The US is turning into RoboCop 2, but China is definitely the dystopia. That's right. This person must hate walking around Sam's Club and being offered free samples all the time. Yeah, of course. She passes by the chocolate fountain a couple times. Obviously, the server will ask them if they want any. The server probably finds her super weird. Like, what is this fucking lady doing here? Why aren't you're just walking around looking at the chocolate fountain? Why aren't you don't want to eat it? What are you doing? This person you see here wants me to try the thing. They want me to try the delicious chocolate fountain. You want some chocolate? I'm being oppressed. This is just, this is unbelievable. This is fucking unbelievable. The server's just trying to gain social credit. That's right. That's what they're saying on Reddit. I don't even want to see what they're saying on Reddit about this. I don't even want to see it. I find it too depressing to look at. Every time I walk up to it, what are you doing, lady? Why are you just walking up to the chocolate fountain? Why is the chocolate dystopian? I stared at this chocolate fountain for 20 minutes and the server thought I wanted some. This is terrifying. I'm actually scared right now. I'm actually scared. Again, I've been standing at the chocolate fountain for hours staring. The server keeps asking me if I want some. She's the one being weird in this case, though. Yeah. Fucking bizarre. The comments are really funny. Man, I really hope she's all right, though. I really hope this lady's all right, because this is really some terrifying dystopian stuff that she's having to experience here. Then there's this stuff from the opening ceremony. Did we see this? Do you know what China did extremely dystopianly? China extremely dystopianly sent out a Uyghur athlete with a Han Chinese athlete, lighting the Olympic cauldron together. That's a little on the nose. Isn't that really, that's really scary, isn't it? This is Russian compromat to me. Yeah, it's really dystopian that they sent out a Uyghur athlete as part of this Olympic opening ceremony. Very dystopian minority representation. The way that they they have representatives from all these different ethnic minorities. Really scary stuff. Really, really scary stuff. Also, no mention of the 40 plus other Chinese cultures that were represented at the ceremony. Yeah, they very specifically had representatives from all the different ethnic minorities. Well, ironically, Marnosh, like CBC offers Olympic coverage in a number of indigenous languages too, and this is the first year that they've done this. They're only now starting to offer content in indigenous languages. You know what? You can actually, there's Uyghur TV stations that are entirely in Uyghur language, and that's been around for some time. This is like not a new thing. Canada is just catching up to this basic idea of having content that can be easily understood by the ethnic minorities in your country. But it gets even weirder though. And this is the fucked up thing, is the thing that I find really dystopian is the coverage of this stuff. Look at this. This is the New York Times. Look at how they describe this. It's so fucking weird. They clearly got brainwashed into this ceremony. That's it. They go, look at the mental gymnastics, bending over backwards to avoid just saying Uyghur athlete. In a provocative choice, China picks an athlete with a Uyghur name to help light the cauldron. Oh my. What a provocative choice. They chose an athlete with a Uyghur name. In a climactic moment to end the opening ceremony of the 2022 Winter Olympics, China chose 2 athletes, including one it said was of Uyghur heritage, to deliver the flame to the Olympic cauldron and officially start the games. It claims. It's still going. They can't just say Uyghur athlete. The moment was tinged with layers of symbolism. A man and a woman working together, a nod to Chinese Olympic history. But it was the choice of Dinigir Yilamuyang, a cross-country skier who the Chinese said has Uyghur roots, that confronted head-on one of the biggest criticisms of the country's role as host. Yeah, this is what's dystopian. This is the dystopian thing. All this coverage to me, that is the dystopian thing about this Olympics so far. No, I know you mean that, I know that, Marnash. Of course, it's a good thing that CBC is doing that. It's just, it's what I think what you're pointing out correctly, though, is an example of how, like, when China does this, it's deemed like it's nefarious somehow. It's nefarious because they're trying to trick us into thinking that they respect ethnic minorities. That's the problem, right? All these things that they do when they try to uplift Uyghur people or other ethnic minorities, when they broadcast media in these languages, in Tibetan language or Uyghur language, when they have Uyghur athletes lighting the Olympic torch, that's all part of some devious trick, tricking us into thinking that they respect these minorities when we all know the real truth. That's what the point of these things are. Like, it's so fucking weird. And just try to ask yourself how the New York Times, for example, would cover this Olympic opening ceremony if there were no ethnic minorities there. If there were no Uyghur people involved with that, do you think that they would be like A-okay with that? They would just not mention that, right? If there was 0 Uyghur people involved in this ceremony or in this process, I'm sure they would just be like, oh yeah, that's fine. That's fine. It's just another in the endless list of examples about how there's literally nothing that China can do. Literally nothing. If there was no Uyghur people there, they would have another article about that. Right? It goes back to that thing that we've been talking about before, where it's like, we have to listen to these ethnic minorities. Listen to these oppressed Uyghur people. When a Uyghur person says, actually, I like living in China. I don't live in some like dystopian war zone, like what you're describing. I actually don't live. My life is actually pretty good. And when someone says that, we say, don't say that. You're brainwashed. You're part of some nefarious state propaganda campaign. Right? There's literally nothing they can do. Every single thing that they can possibly do is going to be spun in this direction. China bad. China doesn't respect ethnic minorities. China's oppressing Uyghur people. And in all these things, the first thing people will say is like, let me see if I can find the comment that I was talking about. Little on the nose, they say. Yeah, but you ask questions about this, and they say like, well, what about the million Uyghurs in camps? That's the thing we should care about. With zero fucking evidence that this exists. Zero evidence. It always goes back to that. You can't win. That's what I mean. 1,000,000% they were planning on being like, wow, no Uyghurs at the opening ceremony, and then there were, and they had to scramble for something to attack. There's literally nothing that they can do. Solve03, Twitch is doing well to break my echo chambers. I'm very happy to hear that. I'm happy to hear that. Imagine the obliviousness required for any American journalist to call literally any other country racist. Or like what, when America has black athletes, of which it has many black athletes. Some of the most famous athletes in America are black. And if other countries talked about that, oh, America in this sinister move, presenting these black athletes, despite black people in the United States being over-incarcerated, despite their communities being devastated by a lack of social services, despite the constant epidemic of black men and black people being murdered by agents of the state, gunned down in the street, gunned down in their homes, gunned down in their beds when they're sleeping. And devious, evil America has to present these black athletes as a way to trick us into thinking that they respect these folks. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like how this would be covered in any other, if the situation was reversed. You're presenting these athletes the government claims are black. That's right. The best part about this is how the Little Red Book, and it talks about how you should be proud when capitalists talk shit about you like this. Yeah. These liberal journalists think they're so progressive and sophisticated, using Red Scare propaganda right at home in the Eisenhower administration. Give me a fucking break. Seriously. Or if Canada has Indigenous athletes, right? If we had Indigenous athletes representing us, it'd be the same thing. As always, talking about black people in America is a fucking really good analogy to talk about how fucking ridiculous a lot of these claims are about human rights in China. Which again, in case anyone's uncomfortable with this, I'll always preface this by saying I don't think I should have to anymore, but I'll preface it by saying it doesn't mean that every single thing in China is 100% perfect or wonderful, or that everyone's human right is respected every single day at all times. But I think that analogy about black people in the United States, not even about the United States, is like foreign policy, right? Not even about the United States foreign policy and drone strikes and invasions and sanctions and stuff, which kill millions of black and brown people around the world every single year. Like, forget about all that. Just about the treatment of like black and brown people within the United States, American citizens. Think about how we talk about, this has been now the central theme of like Western coverage of the Beijing Olympics. Like we talked about at the last Olympics when they were around. We went over this, how it's just like, and now here's Germany. Oh, look at the German team. They look great. Oh, there's the Canadian team. The Canadian team, they look really ready to go for the Olympics. And there's the China team. And China has been credibly accused of several human rights violations, including the Uyghur population being held in these concentration camps. Their voices drop a whole octave. And that's the only thing that they want to talk about when it comes to China. If anything even remotely like how black people are treated in the United States happened to Uyghur people, like try to fucking imagine. Like it's become so normalized, right? It's become so normalized for us to have people just get shot by cops in the street, gunned down in the street. Predominantly black people, but people of all different races. It's become so normalized. Try to imagine if one such incident happened. One such incident. It's literally one in China. Agents of the state breaking into a Uyghur person's house, no knock warrant, smashing the door down in the middle of the night and just executing them in their beds, as what happened when the case in Minnesota literally the other day, like a few days ago. One such incident. And try to imagine how that would then be covered. Our coverage, all this like this hand-wringing and all this like breathless coverage of human rights violations, it's all based in like grainy satellite photos and complete random bullshit about 1 million people being held in camps with zero proof, with literally one picture that we always see time and time again. One picture. of those guys in a prison, of which there are many in the United States, by the way. There's actually more people in prison in the United States than there are in China, but okay. As part of this genocide, we have to see this one picture time and time again. You know, if there's a genocide, generally I think there might be 2 or 3 pictures, personally. Usually when these genocides happen, there's like actual evidence of that. There's refugees, there's a refugee crisis. There's like lots of, it's the one picture policy. There's like lots of images and videos that come out, as we see from the West Bank, we see in Yemen, we see in the United States. There's like images and pictures and stuff that come out about that. Literally one such incident. A Uyghur man in Urumqi or whatever, getting choked out by a cop in full view of a crowd, getting choked out while he begs for his life until he dies. Like, it's the fucking hypocrisy, the level of hypocrisy of the fucking goddamn United Snakes of America, Kaka, doing this kind of coverage of China, and literally that Americans believe that they're somehow don't have the same level of human rights violations. It's like, it's truly stunning. Like, it's actually stunning. Or in Canada's case, the thousands of unmarked graves. It's fucking amazing that Americans still buy this shit. Like, it's honestly incredible to me. This shit happens in America every day. Every single day. People are getting gunned down in the street by police. This vast network of prison systems that are just like where COVID has been running rampant. You want to take a look into the percentage of prisoners that have been died in the last year in the prison system in the United States? And we're going to talk about concentration camps in China because we saw some grainy satellite images, and the fucking Victims of Communism Foundation and the ASPI, backed by Raytheon and all these weapons companies, told us that that's what was going on. What the fuck is going through people's heads when they buy this stuff? I genuinely don't get it. The Canadian government will unanimously consider Xinjiang a genocide, but won't even recognize anything they did to indigenous people to the same degree. Osaku, literally this summer, we're going through this process in Canada of making these horrifying discoveries of mass unmarked graves outside of the residential school system. While this is going on, the NDP, Canada's like left-wing social democratic party, reaches across the aisle with the Conservative Party and declares a genocide in China. That's how this shit is so fucking backwards. Americans really think millions of people will just waltz into a death camp without a fight or refugee crisis. Leftists do this is so embarrassing. What are you doing, babe? I don't know. I don't know either. You know, the more this shit goes on, just the crazier it makes me feel, right? The fucking crazier it makes me feel. I mean, even the fact that people are still saying 1 million people in camps, when they literally, there was that AP article a few months back. I talked to this about with Vijay Prashad yesterday. That AP article. That I did not sound very comfortable saying babe. No, that was a weird comment for me to read, but I tried to bring Marina's spirit to the comment. I talked about that AP article that came out a few months ago where they literally went to these places and was like, oh yeah, all the barbed wire and stuff in these camps don't really seem to be there anymore. Huh. Even though it's still very scary and it's very sinister and there's still a genocide going on, none of that stuff seems to be there anymore. Huh. And people are still saying 1 million people in camps. That's just a fact for people. That's just a fact. There's got to be way more than 1 million in camps in the U.S. And we know this. We know this. We know there are. We know the number of prisoners in the United States. We know that is significantly higher than the number, especially per capita, of prisoners in China. Predominantly, like, disproportionately racialized people. Again, these places have become death camps because of COVID. Which, by the way, that is legitimate concentration camp shit. Just look at what's going on. Again, I've mentioned before, and they do slave labor as well. I've mentioned before as well. Just look into Rikers Island. Look into Rikers Island in good old progressive New York City. And some of the horrific shit that is going on there right now today.
You can count
2.2 million in jail.
Good old Rob
to
talk you through all this.
Nearly 300,000 incarcerated people. Do you hear about this? You don't hear about this in the media too much. Metal Dipshit. Thank you very much for the tier 1 sub. Thank you very much, Metal Dipshit. You don't hear about this too much, do you? Nearly 3,000 incarcerated people have died of COVID-19 since the start of the pandemic, including roughly 300 in federal custody. People in prison are roughly 3 times more likely to die of COVID-19 than the general population after adjusting for the fact that the prison population skews younger. But we're gonna complain about China, aren't we? We're gonna complain about human rights in China. We had an inmate die in PEI recently and people had to fight to get an inquest. I wish people would just wake up to this fucking the hypocrisy. It just drives me nuts. And as we talked about with VJ yesterday, right? As we talked about with VJ, he illustrates exactly why this is happening, right? We don't care. Our ruling class did not all of a sudden decide to start caring about human rights. They don't give a fuck about human rights. What they care about is China not submitting themselves to be a vassal state or a client state of the U.S. That's all it's ever been about, as VJ points out here.
I'm going to be a little rude now because I would like to say that as long as people in the rest of the world behave like the serfs or the coolies or the subordinates of the West, it's okay. If you're a serf, a coolie, a servant, a subordinate, it's okay. As long as China delivered its workers in Shenzhen and other places to Western companies and didn't challenge anything, it was fine. Nobody talked about, human rights and all that shit. Nobody even knew the word Xinjiang or Uyghurs or any of that. Nobody cared about democracy in Hong Kong. Look, the British held Hong Kong for 100 years. They made no democracy there. Okay? It was held as a colonial outpost till 1997. There was no talk about human rights, democracy, nothing. As long as the Chinese said, you can come and make your phones, your plastic buckets, all the shit that you don't want to make at home, make it in Shenzhen, there was no complaint. Clinton, Bush, nobody said a damn thing about human rights. Okay, you got to have a little push and pull. You say, well, we're concerned about freedom of speech and maybe freedom of religion, in China and all of that. Those are marginal things. United States also criticizes Saudi Arabia every year in the state of whatever it is, that religious freedom document. Nobody takes that seriously, that kind of stuff. As long as China was willing to say, come in, use our workers, make your profits, it was fine.
Right. And I implore anyone that has been pulled into this China bad narrative. I would implore anyone to just understand this basic reality. These complaints, this constant propaganda, it's not because our ruling class has all of a sudden decided that they care about human rights. They don't fucking care. I can't stress this enough. They do not fucking care about human rights at all. At all. Not abroad, not around the world, not domestically, not with American citizens, not with immigrants. They do not fucking care about human rights. All this complaint and all the hand wringing and the propaganda and the bullshit that we hear about this is 100% because China is overtaking them as a global superpower, or it's at least reaching that same level, and because they are actually starting to stand up to the United States when they're being disrespected. That's all it's ever been about. A million dead Iraqis, 10,000 tons of depleted uranium in the wheat fields now owned by Monsanto, millions of babies being born with horrific deformities. This is what we want to export to Western China. And I don't want to keep talking about this every single day, Marina, but the refugee crisis. 37 million refugees. 37 million refugees, many of whom are fucking washing up on the shores of the Mediterranean or in the English Channel right now as part of this ongoing war on terror. And these are the people, when the fucking Olympics are going on, and like the Chinese Olympic team comes out, they go, oh, ooh, this is so scary. Ooh, we have to take this opportunity. We have to take this opportunity to lecture China about these horrible human rights abuses. Give me a fucking break. And this is one thing that I've really I feel like I've evolved on a lot, because even when I started doing this stream, I was very uncomfortable. I was very uncomfortable talking about this stuff. And just the more it's gone on, the more I'm just fed up with playing this respectability game. You know, I think I was caught up with that. I was caught up with it when the Hong Kong protests were going on. I didn't want people to yell at me. I didn't want people to start talking about how I support authoritarian and a bootlicker, support human rights abuses, whatever. I didn't want to talk about it. When the whole genocide narrative popped up, I was suspicious of it, but I don't want to be called all kinds of names. And just the more this shit is going on, the more fed up I am with playing this game, this respectability game about this. And it's just, when you see it on its face like this, when you see it really happening now, especially with the Olympics, from fucking Americans of all people, and Canadians, but don't get me wrong, Canadians horrible human rights abusers as well. Westerners in general, the formerly colonial countries who have gotten rich by stealing and expropriating and exploiting and raping and murdering its way through Central and South America, through Southeast Asia, through China itself, all over the fucking world. We're lecturing China on human rights now. Come on. I've had enough of this. I'm not doing this fucking respectability game anymore with this. The chocolate fountain does look sick. I would love to have it. I would love to try that. It's stupid. It's so moronic. We have the Pentagon Papers, we have the Afghanistan Papers. The government admits to crimes every day. Exactly. And Sam Dribs, you're right. Corbyn is a great example. We talked about this. And this is why Corbyn tried to, I love Corbyn, but he tried to play the respectability game too. And he thought if he just apologized enough, if he said the right words, if he showed how seriously he was taking these claims, that they would get off his back and they would let him, do the right thing, build a project of socialism and renewal and these positive things. And as we saw with Corbyn, that was never what it was about. There was no words that he could ever say. There was nothing that he could ever do to get these fucking jackals off his back. Let this be a lesson for all of us. That's where that respectability game gets you. All that does is just show that there's blood in the water. It shows when you start playing this game, it shows the people that take advantage of this stuff that they can hurt you. They got something that they can hurt you with. And the more rope you give them, the more they're just going to keep hurting you with it. Yeah, a really good man was hopeless mismatched against these utter ghouls. Yeah, because he has integrity. He actually has integrity. The people that are making these claims do not. And that's something we all have to internalize. We have to internalize this message. We all want to be respectable and we all want to have integrity and honor and stuff like that. When you're against these people, though, what was the quote? The United States has none. You can only have this approach when your enemy has a conscience. The United States has none. The imperialists have none. It's not just the United States. It's all these Western countries. Civility is the filter. It disarms discourse so that only non-threatening rhetoric enters public discourse. Yeah. Now, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not going to do it anymore. Has anyone seen any more of the footage? I would like to see some of like the commentary. Does anyone have any of the like China bad commentary? It is actual Rob Demon hours right now. It kind of is. I guess I'm fired up by VJ. You know, when you hear from VJ, who's been dealing with this now for decades, and he's always called every horrible name in the book. And does he stop? You know, does he go, okay, well, maybe I'm going to tone this stuff down because I'm worried about what people are going to say to me? No, he keeps it up. He ramps it up in intensity. He keeps going. That's what we all have to do. Does anyone have like a clip of any of the China bad coverage? Because I would like to see some of like the commentary if you have it. I didn't look it up ahead of time. Let me see if I can find something. I hope that person that talked about having their echo chamber challenged is still around, because that was I always appreciate it when I feel like we're reaching people that have been not considering some of this stuff. Oh, that's right, the copyright Olympic stuff. That's true. Fuck. If I ever got dragged by Fiji, I would probably have to commit seppuku to restore my family's honor. There's no other way to do it. There's no other way to do it. You just gotta take yourself out. It's the only thing you can do. That's right. I'll check Carl's Twitter. And I'm going to get Carl on the show as well. Okay, this is good. This is good. Carl's actually a good source for this kind of stuff right now. Look at this. The Atlantic, the dour message of China's second Olympics. Since 2008, the game's 2022 host has grown more powerful and more fearful. That's the fucking Vietnam flag, Atlantic. That's not the Chinese flag, Atlantic. That's the fucking Vietnam flag, you racist losers. Jesus Christ. It's one of those reds. You just put a red star on there. Must be China. That's right. It's one of those in communist countries in Asia, so it's something like that, right? It is actually kind of a sick Olympics logo. I agree. And we can get into this stuff too. This is great. The defector. Now there's a defector. The media loves this shit as well. Teenage superstar Eileen Gu stuns America with defection to China. It sounds like it's like a political defection, like she's leaving the country. She's literally just as people have pointed out in the past, many this very common thing of athletes competing for like their home, like the countries of their heritage. Very, very common. And as Carl pointing out, she literally is just like, I'm gonna compete for China because of my Chinese grandma.
Skier. She was born in San Francisco. Eileen Gu is 18 years old. She's a skier. She was born in San Francisco. She's a favorite to win several gold medals in the Winter Olympics in China this year. But she's not going to be competing for the country of her birth or her citizenship. Instead, she's going to be on China's Olympic team. She has one parent who was born in China, and she switched sides despite the fact she's American. What does this tell us about the moment we're living in and about our future? Will Kane is the co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend. He's also the host of the Will Kane podcast, which is excellent. He joins us now. Well, thanks for coming on. This seemed like a significant story. Do you think that it is?
I think it is. I think it's a significant story if we consider that it's about something much bigger than Eileen Gu.
This happens all the time.
First, Eileen Gu. I mean,
all the time.
It is incredibly, I think the only word we can arrive at is ungrateful for her to turn her back on the country that not just raised her, but turned her into a world-class skier with the training and facilities that only the United States of America can provide. For her to then turn her back on that in exchange for money is shameful. It's ungrateful, like a child that says, I'm out of here. I'm moving somewhere else after being raised in a warm home. That's what she is, and she will soon, I suspect, Tucker, come to regret it.
I'm planning on doing it.
Tennis player who dared to speak out about sexual harassment and then mysteriously disappeared. Eileen Gu, I think, has had to sacrifice her American passport.
Literally didn't disappear.
So welcome to China.
Multiple images and videos of her.
And the riches that you have earned through betraying America are all worth it because you have definitely sold out.
Well, that's exactly it. And look, this girl's 18. You make dumb decisions, you get stupid tattoos, you renounce your citizenship to go to China, whatever. Young people do dumb things. But there should be collective revulsion as we watch this. Like, we shouldn't make it easy for people to betray their own country, should we?
You can train in China. Yeah. China having decent sporting facilities. Okay, I don't know if this is true. I don't know if this is real. Someone posted this in the Discord server. I really hope it is. I really want this to be real. I hope it's not fake news, okay? I'm going to share it. Hopefully it's not fake news. I really want this to be real though. Cuz this is queen behavior. It's real? Is that true? This is queen behavior. Uncritical support. Uncritical support for Eileen Gu. Uncritical. But she deleted after? Okay. No notes. She should have stood by this. I understood why she did delete it because I'm sure it was getting all kinds of lunatics harassing her over it, but uncritical support for Eileen here. It's real to me, damn it. That's fucking amazing.
Eileen Gu is 18 years old.
That's all that Carl has on his page about it. Do you have any more coverage of this? I would die for her. Defecting to China is cool as hell. We should all be doing this. Okay? We should all be doing it. We should all defect to China. I hope she wins gold and then does, if you remember Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels back in the day when he was feuding with Bret the Hitman Hart and like when he took the Canadian flag and like did this like sexual move and humped it. He humped the flag and then like was sticking it up his nose and stuff. I hope she does that with the US flag. You ever see someone living your dream? I've been trying to convince my sister-in-law who's Chinese to move back and let me be her kid's nanny. There we go, Marina. I knew you'd be on top of this. I could defect to Vietnam too, another good country to defect to. We gotta at least defect, okay? I could see myself defecting to Cuba, Venezuela. China would be, I mean, that's the thing. That's the new like superpower though as well. It would be kind of cool to be involved in that somehow. Just play a tiny role, right? I'm playing a tiny role in my pro bono propaganda work that I do for the Chinese government.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Unpaid, unacknowledged, by the way, President Xi, sir. Eventually, maybe they'll acknowledge it, but for now, it's pro bono. The Cuban Sun would be pretty sick. Yeah. Does China have that good McDonald's Diet Coke? I imagine they do. They got McDonald's there. I know CGTN wanted to give young influencers to make content for them. I can't believe I didn't sign up for this. Yeah. That's on you, Marina. That's on you. You got to be on top of that. But all the censored internet is going to easily be bypassed with the VPN. The internet sucks anyways. Good riddance. That's what I say. Good fucking riddance. And here's the man himself. The man of the hour. The man of the hour. Nothing but respect for my president. Show some respect. Respect the office. I'm sure there's people that are going to eventually see these streams and just get so mad. I'm like, I've managed to fly under the radar, I think, from most of like the high profile like China bad people. Eventually they're going to discover me though, and they're just going to get so mad. They're going to watch this and just be furious. And like in a way I like that I'm under the radar. In a way I kind of want them to eventually start freaking out at me though. Rob is state media. Eventually, this is my goal. Eventually people are going to start saying this shit about me. Seeing if we could see any of his speech. We should probably talk about this new this anti-NATO alliance that's being ironed out right now with Russia and China. That's the next thing that is pretty exciting that's happening. They just unveiled it is kind of like a new faction. It's what the funniest thing about America's dumbass losers that fucking run America is that like these two countries hated each other. They had everything that they wanted. These countries hated each other. And because you're so stupid, and belligerent, you've literally forced them to start working together again to undermine you. You assholes. You dumb assholes. It's amazing. They've literally planted the seeds of their own destruction through their own fucking arrogance. Their own arrogance and belligerence. It is funny because all the diplomatic boycotts too. Although it was really funny as well. They're like, we're doing a diplomatic boycott of the Olympics, and then they're like calling China, going, but seriously, some of our diplomats do need to go though. So can they get in there as well? It's like you pathetic, just pathetic, loser shit. Loser shit. And look at this as well. I mean, this is pretty cool. Russia just signed now. This is one of the things that they announced as part of this partnership that they're announcing right now. Just signed a 30-year contract to supply gas to China via new pipeline, boosting the Russian and Chinese energy alliance amid strained ties with the West. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Putin called on the West to abandon Cold War ideology in talks ahead of Beijing. And yeah, it's like, good luck trying to sanction Russia now. Good luck trying to cut off Russia's supply of natural gas to Europe now. Not even that people in Europe even want that, because they're all more than happy with this arrangement. The only person that isn't happy is the United States. But yeah, there you go. Good luck with that. I'm sure your threats of sanction are really, they're just terrified. Well, encouraging people, they call it Cold War ideology because that's what's going on. And they're not saying that it's over. They're saying that it is continuing, and it's the United States that's exacerbating it, which they're correctly pointing out. Also, Iran and Venezuela and Russia, these countries have nothing in common, and Nicaragua as well, and Iran. Nicaragua and Iran forming these partnerships. What do these two countries have in common? What they have in common is that these countries that have been under the boot of U.S. imperialism for decades, and Cuba's involved in this as well, are all realizing we don't need to like put up with this shit anymore. We do not have to put up with this shit anymore. And again, this is entirely due to America's own ignorance and belligerence and arrogance. So good job. Good job to the ruling class of the good old US of A for this. Just see if I can find, if he gave a little speech, that'd be good to look at.
从2008年的同一个世界、同一个梦想，到2022年的一起向未来，中国积极参与奥林匹克运动，坚持不懈弘扬奥林匹克精神，是奥林匹克理想的坚定追求者、行动派。北京冬奥会明晚就要开幕了，世界期待中国，中国做好了准备，我们将竭诚为世界奉献一届简约、安全、精彩的奥运盛会，践行更快、更高、更强、更团结的奥林匹克格言。
Well, yeah, and ironically as well, like, China is actually the country in this case that's actually trying to like live up to the ideas of the Olympics, of like unity and working together and cooperation and this kind of stuff. Whereas once again, it's the formerly colonial countries, the United States, Canada, and these fucking pathetic Western countries that are trying to politicize everything and trying to use everything as like a way to like attack them, use this as a platform to talk about their so-called human rights abuses, which of course we have nothing to do with. It's just sad. It's just pathetic. And though that's the thing that I find encouraging is that the whole world understands this shit now. Even countries like Germany are starting to be like, ugh. Everyone sees the writing on the wall. It's only the delusional Western countries that still believe that we're like the bosses of the world, and that we have the right to like use these incidents to like lecture people. I wouldn't say formerly. Yeah, well, that's true as well. Blueberry.